Hey everybody, welcome to the Southern Summer Book Club here at Southern Review of Books. My name is Bradley Sides and I'm going to be hosting this series throughout the summer. Kicking it off, we are talking about Kionna Walker LeMalle's Behind the Waterline, which is just out from Blair. This is a beautiful book about family, and home, and history, and I'm looking forward to diving into it with our book club soon. Speaking of our book club, I'm going to go get everybody so we can talk. In the meantime, if you'll take a look to get more information about Kionna and our book club, and I'll be back in just a few seconds. Hey everybody, welcome back. As you can see, I'm joined here with our book club. We have Scott Gould, Donna Newsom, and Annie Phillips, which you've just read about and seen more about. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the book. I'm going to start by actually reading the back of the book. So for those of you who maybe haven't read the book quite yet, you'll know what exactly Behind the Waterline is about. So here's the back. When Hurricane Katrina approaches New Orleans, teenage Eric and his grandmother and many of their neighbors decide to ride out the storm. Kionna Walker LeMalle's masterful debut novel brings her readers, like the rising water, onto Eric Street in the Third Ward, where stranded dogs bark for a time, where neighbors are floating on doors, and where Eric and his grandmother must take refuge in the second-floor bedroom. After days of heat, dwindling supplies, and relentless rising water, neighbors begin to disappear, and Eric's grandmother, already known as an eccentric, begins to falter. It is then that Eric, in a dream, a hallucination, or something else, discovers a room beyond his closet wall, a place he's never seen. What he discovers inside will send him on a path to discover secrets of survival, bitter progress, and ultimately the history of his own people, those he sorely misses and those he never even knew. So that places the book a little bit for us. First question, let's go ahead and kind of go beneath that layer a little bit and talk about kind of the big themes that have kind of resonated with us or we've thought about the most since we finished the novel. Scott, you want to start us out?
Yeah, sure. Theme. Okay, that's always a tough one. Theme. One thing that and heck, I don't even know if this is theme, is the idea of revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, the hurricane stripped everything down, and it's interesting how through that process, which is horrific and devastating, things become revealed that may or may not be positive, and that struck me as, and it's kind of hinted at in the title,
Yeah,
behind the waterline. I mean, there's your first breadcrumb, but I thought it was really interesting the way she used that, sort of move it in two different directions.
mm-hmm. It happens early on and it continues throughout too. Like I love
Yeah,
that. That's good. That's good.
yeah,
Donna, what about for you?
I thought about two things. One is the living, how the past is really already always right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's living in the house with them, and one is trying to avoid it, and the other one can just reach out just enough, but just can't touch it until the hurricane. And so I see the hurricane as a visitor that really allows them to live fully.
Yep.
So definitely that was one of the themes that I saw. And then the second one, I really looked deeply at um, generational trauma
Mm-hmm.
and how this is being revisited time after time. And then when we, spoiler alert, when we get to the end, we realize that it's not just their family's trauma,
Yeah.
that is another family's trauma as well. So those are the two big ticket items that stuck out for me in terms of theme.
Mm-hmm. I love the generational trauma one because I know we're going to talk about that a lot as we keep going. Thanks, Donna. Annie?
Wow, it's always great hearing other folks, everyone's so smart. Trying to think. I think what one of the things, and I'm gonna look at my notes here, like just the idea of like just kind of whole lives being lived in one life, like with Ruth, it's like you think, or and it's the whole presentation is made that she's just this crazy old lady,
Hmm.
and she's not. She's a G. She's as Neil says at the end, and sort of not discounting or discrediting anybody just from first looks or first impressions. Like you have no idea what maybe somebody has lived. Um, and then I think just another theme, the power of community and you know yeah, it was a very powerful book for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love the community stuff too, because that I know that'll come up too soon as we
Yes.
talk more. And for me,
Yes.
kind of playing off that a little bit, I was really drawn into the idea of kind of the power of storytelling. It starts from the beginning, and we have the whole novel's kind of set up in this way where we're going to get people telling their stories. These kids have this assignment where they have to unveil a legend in their family. So the book just really smartly structures the story as being
Mhm.
about our stories. And I love how she did that and kind of added that layer there. And then at the end, when we come back, Annie referenced it, but it's one of my favorite passages in the whole book where Neil, who's one of Eric's friends, as we come to learn at the end of the book. There's this line. I'm going to read it real quick because I love it. A paragraph that says, he's explaining to Neil's explaining to Eric the power of his grandma, like her story. And he says, because man, no matter who your daddy is or what he do or don't do, that's what's in you. Her, she's a real G, yo. I don't even know how she kept going, but she did. And even after your mama died and your daddy disappeared, she was still a G. When everybody turned their backs on her, she just kept going. That's power, man. And you got that. It's in you. I just love that idea of that continued story. Um,
It's
yeah, I was into it the whole time. But you also have this idea kind of like stories we have to ask to hear them sometimes. And I think Eric sometimes has that problem with not really knowing what to say or how to get that out of his grandmother. But his grandmother also doesn't want to tell that story. So it takes the story being unveiled for the work to really show. But I loved what she did with stories. I thought it was so cool. Let's talk about the main characters, Ruth and Eric. Do we connect with them? What do we think about them? Kind of lasting memories, those kinds of things. Annie, you want to go reverse order?
Oh, sure. Well, I just loved both Ruth and Eric. They just felt so alive to me. I think Kiana just did an amazing job with the character development. And Eric, so Eric's 14, my son's 14, about to be 15. I felt such tenderness for Eric. I just wanted to, and you got why Ruth was so protective of him. He was just this sort of pure, person, and
Mhm.
just wanting to know more and wanting to love, of course loves his grandmother, but like with Pastor Charles, wanting that father and wanting to know what happened to his parents, and just yeah, I just felt very strongly about them both.
Hmm. Hmm. Donna?
Yeah, I there were times where I was a little frustrated with Ruth. I wanted to just pry the knowledge out of her at some point, but I realized that she'd been protecting it for so long that that would just be very transformative for her personality to begin to reveal that.
Hmm.
And for Eric, you don't know what you don't know, but he knew something was missing,
Yeah. Yeah.
so he doesn't know the questions to really ask. And I also have to put in the part about he seems to be a little confused about his racial background. So he's not even really 100% sure about that. So who am I? And when you're sure about your identity, that gives you a much stronger footing in society.
Hmm.
When you're unsure, you're not sure how to really navigate those worlds. And so he also has that. But I think he is such an authentic young teenage boy with all of those thoughts about manhood and friendships. And I like this girl, but she's digging my friend, and and so I really gravitated towards that because I find sometimes you really don't find authentic characterization
Hmm.
with teenagers, particularly teenagers in modern time. And I think the author did a great job in creating those teenage characters.
Hmm. I do too. And I love the when the writing club comes at the end and we get even more of them. I was like, yeah, I love the voices. They're really good. Scott.
All right. Y'all gonna hate me if I say something negative or
No.
something. Okay. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed their interactions. I thought Eric's character at times was pretty inconsistent. I thought now I realize that he's confused and that can lead to inconsistency. But I thought even some of the dialogue and some of the usages he was putting in dialogue was a little inconsistent, and some of the some of his actions, especially like one I when and Annie, I know you've got a kid this age, so you can shoot me down on this. But when he sees the pastor for the first time in a long time, and there was a description of him running and jumping in his lap, and I've taught boatloads of ninth graders, and I don't know many that would go. They're too cool to jump in somebody's lap, even if it is the pastor that you've been missing forever. So, and that was just again, we all know what opinions are worth, right? I mean, but this is just some of the things that struck me. But I thought his character really blossomed when he met Layla,
Mhm.
and I thought that the facets of his character really started. We get new facets when he met her, and because it opened his character up a lot more. And those are my favorite scenes. I know that's another question, but those are my favorite scenes in the book is when he's interacting with her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the choice too of with the characters. I was really interested in why she chose Eric to kind of tell the story instead of
Mm,
Ruth. And I was kind of like, I really wish Ruth was telling the story. But then as I got further into it, I was like, no, this was the right choice with having Eric because I think it really allows, I think it allows us to have a warmth with Ruth that I don't know that we would feel if she were the one telling the story.
yeah,
And I was just interested in how that kind of developed in my mind with the shift of the narrator and what
yeah.
I was wanting. Uh,
Well, can I ask Annie a question?
of
Um,
course.
with him being the focal point of the book and him being that age,
Mhm.
and as a librarian, Annie, did you feel like this was a YA novel or leaning toward a YA novel at all?
I I'm so glad you said that. I really felt like this would be an excellent, like this could be one of those great sort of crossover. I mean, I loved it as an adult, but I really got a great feel for it as a YA novel. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I just wonder if Blair, the publisher, has thought about cross marketing it as a
yeah.
YA novel and a literary fiction novel. It just struck me because Bradley, what you were saying with him being such that voice of the book, and he's that 14-year-old kid,
Mhm.
it felt like that, and that's not a pejorative at all. I mean, YA
No,
is, I love YA novels.
Yeah.
yeah. And that my thought too, and that's like just a high compliment because I think this could really cross over in interests for both audiences and yeah.
Mhm. I agree. I was especially in the second half of the book too. Whenever I think we have more of the teenage characters, I was like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. This could be for all kinds of readers. I thought.
Hmm.
Um, we've mentioned some of the kid characters. We've talked about Eric and Ruth, but of the other characters we see on the outside, the supporting characters, which ones do you think kind of stood out to you the most for different reasons? Anybody just want to go first on that one?
Oh,
I thought Miss Hornwell was very authentic.
Yeah.
She was really, I guess, more consistent.
Mhm.
She maintained her professionalism, but even after she was displaced, she brought that in about the displacement and her being uncomfortable, and that's that's a real experience for someone. I know the situation of having to evacuate to Houston and just feeling like you were treated differently even though you're coming with professional credentials, in a certain space, and you're one of them and not one of us, and you're a refugee, you're an evacuee, and all those names that you get called simply because you lived in another state prior to Hurricane Katrina, actually.
Mhm.
And so I think she really brought that, and she gave the students the stability they needed, to maintain a sense of home. And that really wasn't very easy to do. And so she really stood out for me, and I was really proud of of her character, because it showed the power of what one teacher can do.
Yep, absolutely. Scott or Annie?
Yeah, I mean, secondary characters. I always used to tell my students that they needed to serve one or two purposes. They needed to like help us understand the main characters better or move the plot forward.
Mhm.
And if you can do it both at the same time, then you got to win. And I felt like Miss Hornwell, Layla, I mean, even some of the super minor characters did that really well. I thought her handling of secondary characterization was pretty amazing. It was especially Layla. Anytime she was in a scene, the energy of the scene in the book picked up. I
Yeah.
mean that was I looked forward to having her come back in the book, especially like when you first see her in that Goodwill scene. I mean the energy of the book changes right there,
Yep.
because she lets us know more about Eric, and she moves the plot forward, and then she ends up becoming integral in sort of that in the story that's behind the wall.
Hmm. Hmm. Annie?
I loved Miss Hornwell as well. I'd love and I know there's only so much room in one story in one book. I'd love to hear more of her story as well, and even if there was like a book about her. But I loved how at the very beginning with the class and telling about your legend, a legend in your family. I thought that was really cool.
Mhm.
I loved Neil. He was like a bully at first, but then of course, with his mother drowning, I mean, that was horrifying. And then the development he goes through, where he really, makes an effort with Eric, and goes, he matures beyond, what he was. And I loved Pastor Charles. Like, he was just a beautiful, strong, even though he too was going through so much personal grief and loss, he was stepping up in so many different ways for his community and for this family this kind of found family, created family with Eric and Ruth.
Mhm. I think for me, one of the characters, I love Neil. I thought his characterizations were really interesting, and he had an interesting kind of story. But
Mhm.
Old Man Jake, who is not really in the book that much,
Yes.
but I just loved every time he was there because I felt he really gave. I think his presence really gave a sense of place that felt really real to me, because he grounded that neighborhood and made it had this little quirkiness, this amount of love. He was drinking or dancing or whatever it was he was doing, but he was doing it, and there was energy around
Mhm.
him. And I thought him just being there kind of off the page was really interesting because he kept coming back. Even at the end, he's mentioned several times.
Mhm.
Um,
That
let's
final scene at the end, he's
yeah,
he's the key to that final scene. So I mean, it's
Yes.
kind of funny that I mean, when you're ending the book, you want it. She goes back to him at the end of the book, which is
yeah,
kind of interesting.
yeah, yeah. It just gave such an interesting energy to it. And I love that energy with that. With anytime he was around, it was cool.
Yeah.
I thought. Favorite scene. That's one of my favorite questions to always ask for people. What kind of lingers with you? Favorite scenes or those kinds of moments.
Well, I think I've already mentioned one that I like is the Goodwill scene when, uh, because it occurs at that transitional point in Eric's and Ruth's life. When they've moved and he's you know literally and figuratively trying to put on some new clothes.
Yeah.
And but when Layla comes in, you see a different side of Eric. So I went back and read that scene a couple of times because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done.
Hmm. one of my favorite scenes. It's not favorite because it's like makes me happy or anything, but the scene that I keep thinking about, and I've gone through the book several times, but the scene where we meet Leonard and Lenny uh,
Hmm.
outside the Astrodome, and we see just the immediacy of the pain and the death and the treatment. It's a very short scene, but I thought it was so well done and just how much it made the lightness that kind of surrounds it. Like before, there's a little bit of silliness and, laughter and those kinds of things, but then it immediately kind of shifts once the hurricane arrives and we have this just heaviness. And I think that was really true to the moment. And I just love that scene. It broke my heart, really. I mean, it was a sad, sad moment in the book. I still think about that scene. Donna or Annie, do y'all have a couple you want to mention?
One of
Go Don.
one of the funny scenes. So I envision it when they were at the Astrodome and they wanted to take a shower, and
Yeah.
remember the young mom says, "Oh, there's this place right over here, and you can take a shower. You just got to do this." And then they get there, and she realizes it's for the animals, and I could just see her face, like, okay, I'm eccentric, but I'm just not going to go there.
Yeah.
So that's a moment because when you understand that concept of the rodeo and where this may have been in the Houston Astrodome, that's just that added a little lightheartedness to the novel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
And
love that part too, Donna. I'm glad you mentioned that.
yeah,
Annie?
and it shows just kind of piggybacking off that with Ruth, like you said, she may be eccentric, but she is a woman of great pride and dignity. And this, she was just like, nope, this is my, I draw the line.
Mhm.
I loved, I mean, the flashback scenes. I think that was a very, very cool kind of magical realism. I did want to mention this is of interest from a Huntsville perspective. So, of course, they're trying to integrate the at Ole Miss, right? Yeah, and y'all may or may Bradley, you may or may not know. So James Meredith, who was the first student to integrate at Ole Miss, his son John is one of our city council members of in Huntsville.
Hmm.
So just
Oh,
kind of a little aside there. I just thought that was very, very interesting.
I had no idea about that, Annie.
Yep. Yep. And he is a lovely, lovely man and great council member. So, but yeah, I loved that. Just, I think it's just so important. All the ways that history can be told. And I think this was a great way, for many of us who, it's like you may know some of it, but like just again, how incredibly dangerous it was to do what they did and to do it anyway. I thought that was very powerful. So all of those scenes. And then also, you mentioned Old Man Jake. I loved, his all his scenes and that doing that second line for him at the
Yeah.
very end and describing it. I thought that was really, really cool.
Mhm.
So,
Annie, you mentioned the magical realism kind of side. I don't know that we've talked about that a lot.
mhm.
What did we think of the magical realism? I was interested in it. It reminded me of Kindred in a way, the way it was done, which I love
Mhm.
because I teach Kindred every semester, it seems like. I
Yes.
love Kindred. But just what do we think about the magic being there?
I liked it. I thought it was well done. It wasn't over like bearing. It
Mhm.
wasn't like weird or anything. It just fit really well in.
Mhm. And for
the,
me, I kind of thought, is it even really magical realism? I was like, yeah, Bradley, it is maybe. I don't know.
well,
Yeah.
that's where I was kind of going. It's like what Annie said is like, to me, it wasn't. Um, it was organic with the story. It
Mhm.
didn't feel like, okay, now we've suddenly shifted to.
Yep.
I don't know if you read some of Kevin Brockmeyer's stuff, and
Oh yeah.
all of a sudden the sky is coming down on everybody's head, and it's like you know that you've entered the magical realistic world.
Yeah.
But this one just, it seems so organic for the story. I didn't sit there and go, "Oh, here comes the magical realism part." I thought it was great the way that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Donna, what about for you?
I also thought of Kindred by Octavia Butler. It's one of my favorite.
Hmm.
I'm not even a big science fiction person,
Hmm.
but I do love Kindred. Have loved it since college, and so I love the power of the imagination. Like I can imagine this past, and this past is within me, and so it's kind of converging those where those two things meet. So every time he was there and he was getting closer and closer, it just kind of felt like, you in movies and the music is starting to play and everything about to jump right open. That's kind of the impression that I got. So I was always kind of a little bit different from Scott. I was kind of anticipating
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
those parts because I wanted to see, okay, let's get further in the past.
Hmm.
But I love those scenes, and I thought it was very natural for him to learn about his past and imagine what that looked like based on the photographs and the newspaper articles that he encountered.
Hmm. Hmm. So we're running out of time. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the little things of the book, maybe that have kind of resonated with us that maybe other people might have picked up on, they might not have picked up on. For me, I loved um, I've been reading a lot of food writing recently, and at my college, we're doing Amy Nezuko Bite by Bite as our common read for this year. So I've been reading, all kinds of food stuff. And I was just so interested in the chicken salad that keeps repeating and how it means so much. It means nothing, but then it means everything to Eric. And I think about my grandmother because so many of the memories I have of her involve food. And like I can, with her biscuits that she would make, I can smell those. I can still taste those. And it's been 15, 20 years, since I've had those. And I just love uh, that idea of food, what it can do, something that seems so small, a chicken salad, but it's something big in this book, and I love that.
Yeah, you stole mine. I was going to say food too, especially there's that scene where the pastor and Eric stop on the way back the first time, and they stop at a place and they're eating. I don't I forget who orders what, but it's really well done. The other
Mhm.
thing I thought is like it's really hard when you write to describe space and describe what a room looks like and not make it sound like a cliche.
Yeah.
And I thought, especially, with the way space was torn apart in the book because of the hurricane, I thought the way that the space was described was a really, and that may be getting too much in the writer weeds, but I noticed that stood out to me as something that was really well done was just taking the physical space and describing it and laying that groundwork imagistically for the reader.
Hmm. Hmm.
Cool. As a non-writer, I like hearing that perspective. That's really neat.
Other little things that stick out that we'll remember from the book.
Did anybody pick up on the teenagers' use of the dictionary? Like I have to pull my students to use a dictionary. So I love that, and I realize, okay, here's this different type of teenager. Um,
Yeah.
I love bringing in the dictionary. That kind of stood out because he did it so many times and what it added to his knowledge of things and cleared up some confusion.
Hmm. Annie, do you have anything on there?
Yeah, I have a few just sort of random things, but they all, I don't know. I loved how Ruth, she was so drawn to the little children, the babies. Like she, even in the Astrodome,
Hmm.
or not the, in the convention center, like she was wiping their noses and like
Oh,
pulling it.
yeah.
And then of course the little, Scarlett's little baby that she cared for until, she was reunited with her mother, just that care she had. I also loved Eric's when he's kind of wants to retreat, when he's feeling stressed or just whatever, he gets out his marbles, the rocks. And I don't know, I just thought that was very, um, I don't know what the word is, but I don't know. It was very kind of just a really neat detail about his personality and what his psyche, and how he deals with that. And for me too, I mean, we all, of course, know about Katrina. I mean, I remember, when it was happening, but not having been through it, I think this is the closest, like, it was harrowing. I mean, the parts where they're going through the storms, and I mean, it was harrowing, and dealing with being, days without end, without showering, and just it's hard to imagine. But I'm glad that, again, this is like ways to incorporate history. Those of us who haven't necessarily experienced it firsthand, but to understand what people went through. So.
Mhm. Those are good. Those are good. Well, I have just a few minutes left, so let's close with, for people who enjoyed this book and are looking for something similar to it, anything out there you would recommend to them? For me, I've already mentioned Kindred. That's the one I think is the closest in comparison, but what others do you think would be good fits?
I've got a couple suggestions, librarian here. I just recently read Junie by Aaron Crosby Eckstein. Just came out in February. It was a GMA pick. Fantastic. And I think, again, you've got a young woman, she's like Eric's age. This is set back, this is in the Civil War. She's enslaved, but it has the elements of the magical realism, where her sister's appearing to her, and finding out this family history and these amazing kind of world rocking things. Junie was fantastic.
Hmm.
Recommend it.
I'm,
Oh,
Brad,
go ahead, Donna.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm definitely Kindred, and that is absolutely the first thing that came to mind. Another one is The Time Traveler's Wife.
Hmm.
That would be my second one.
Hmm.
Well, I found myself thinking about, first of all, older books because I'm old, and but I kept thinking about books that dealt with natural disasters, like even back Faulkner's The Wild Palms,
Oh yeah.
about the flood when the Mississippi started moving backwards because it was flooding so bad, and then I'm going to throw a plug in for a South Carolina writer since I'm in South Carolina. Josephine Humphreys has a book called Fireman's Fare, which deals with a hurricane. And those, I know those are way in the past, but I just my first thoughts went to books that have the hub of the book as a natural disaster.
And I guess, well, Donna and I too will be reading Salvage the Bones again this year, probably for something we'll be working on. So that's one
Yeah.
that similarities in ways with Hurricane Katrina. Well, I guess that we reached the end of our time here. I appreciate y'all joining us for the Southern Review of Books. If you haven't read Behind the Waterline yet, make sure to pick up a copy at your local independent bookstore or stop by your local library. And I look forward to talking with everybody more next month when we'll be talking about Julia Elliott's short story collection, Hellions, which is a totally different book, but wonderful just the same. So thank you everybody for watching with us.
Thank
Bye
you so
bye.
much.
Take
Thanks a
care.
lot.
Good night.